Hi, I'm JB from Huffy, and today I'm going to be helping you do a generic assembly of a 12, 14, 16, 18, and some 20-inch bikes. So stick with me as we go through everything here on the table, and we'll get your bike assembled for you in no time. To begin our assembly, we first need tools. So I have our tools laid out on the table here. I have a 15mm metric spanner wrench. I have an air pressure gauge. I have a 15mm pedal wrench from Park Tool. You can use a regular wrench if you have it, but that's optional for you. It gets you a little bit more leverage. And then I have an air pump as well so that we can fill up our tires after we're done assembling. Moving to our parts on the table, we have our saddle or seat, and it has the seat post attached to it already. We have our left and right pedals, our training wheels with brackets attached, our front tire, and it has the hardware on here as well. And then we have our handlebar on this side over here. Now, if you've gone through all of your parts and you notice you have something missing, make sure to reach out to customer service. The number is on the back of your owner's manual, instruction booklet, and or any other paperwork that you might have in the box. Make sure to reach out to them and get your parts that you're missing. Next, we're going to go into assembling the bike and putting the parts that came in our box on our bike so that we can ride it and have some fun with it. So to start, we're going to take our seat and seat post and put it in the bike. So you're going to open the QR lever. And so that is this area right here. So this lever is going to close and it's going to clamp the seat post in here. So we'll open that. I'm going to loosen mine just by hand here using my thumb. Slide the post in and close the lever. Now, mine's too loose right now, so I can move my seat post, and we don't want this to happen. So what I'm going to do is open the lever, remove my seat post, and tighten the QR lever down. So there is this knob right here, and we are turning it to tighten, and we'll get it snug. It doesn't have to be super tight, just as tight as you can get it with your hand. And then we'll try the process again by inserting the seat post, closing the lever, and checking to make sure that our seat doesn't move up and down or left and right. If it doesn't move up and down or left or right, you're good to go. If it does move, just repeat the process. Open the lever, tighten this down, and then close it back. If you're getting to a point where you're closing the lever and it really doesn't seem like you can get this any tighter, consider removing the seat post entirely, tightening it down, closing without the seat post in place, opening it back up, and then giving it another spin by hand. This sometimes lets you get a couple more twists of the knob before it gets too tight, and that might get you to where you need to be. All right, so that is putting the saddle into the seat tube. So now we've got that part done. Next thing we're going to do is add our training wheel brackets. So these are 15mm hardware, and I'm going to remove that. I'm going to leave the bracket alignment piece on the bike. I'm going to take my training wheel here and bracket and just get that hand tight. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And there is no left or right for these. You can use either one on either side. And I'm just getting these hand tight right now. And the reason why I'm putting them on right now is just so the bike has stability as we work on some of the other parts. So they're loose still, but they're going to help hold up the bike as we start to work on it. So next up is the front wheel and tire. We're going to loosen the hardware that is on the axles. Once again, these are 15mm, so you can use your wrench if you need to open them up. You're going to notice you're going to have these safety dropout washers on there as well. Those are going to go on the outside, so make sure that they are towards the outside. We're going to lift our bike up and we're going to place the wheel axle through the dropouts on the fork. And these are your dropouts right here. So your fork may look like this, where the dropout is up front. Your fork may come to a pinched end and have this similar looking space right here, just over here at the end of this part. Different styles, but do exactly the same thing. So putting that in place, I'm going to spin my safety washer with a little hook there. I'm going to put the tab in the hole so that it doesn't go anywhere. I'm just going to hand tighten these for now. Same on the other side. Now, if your bike has a directional tread pattern, you want to match that tread pattern to whatever the rear tire is. So if you have, let's say, an arrow pattern, you want it facing forward and matching the same as your rear wheel. If you're doing this upside down, as some people have learned to work on bikes upside down, just remember to look at that rear wheel for reference, because it will be backwards when you're looking at it from the bottom of the bike. All right, so I have those hand tight. I want to make sure that it's centered and that we have good spacing there. This one is. So I'm going to use this 15 millimeter and tighten it up, making sure that our wheel is staying centered as I tighten it up. I'm going to work a little bit on both sides just to make sure that we get even pressure on the fork. And I'm really just snugging these up. They don't have to be super, super tight. You obviously don't want it loose, so you don't have the front wheel falling off. And that is why you have the safety washer on there as well, is to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. But you don't have to put a super amount of torque on it. So once it's tight, you're good to go. Make sure that it's even. Just kind of check the space between each side of the fork. You want this to be pretty equal. All right, so our bike is pretty stable now. It's up, it's in its full position. This kind of gives us the opportunity to go ahead and tighten the training wheel brackets into place. Now, the 15 millimeter nuts that are on these axles here aren't necessarily keeping the wheel on, but they are keeping that bracket in place. There are other nuts that have already been installed on the axle from the factory that are going to hold the wheel in place and keep tension on your chain. So what I'm doing now is I'm just loosening these up. And I'm finding that good middle ground so that when I'm tightening these down, I still get rear wheel contact with the ground. If you tighten these into place and they lift the rear wheel up, your rider is going to pedal their bike and not go anywhere. So I'm going to kind of do these side by side. And I kind of look down on the training wheel bracket and kind of give myself a reference on both sides. Then I'll tighten it down. With my 15 millimeter wrench. And you may find that as you tighten these down, it lifts that rear wheel up and makes it to where it doesn't touch the ground, like that just happened to me here. So I'll loosen it up. And I'll adjust my training wheel so that it's a little bit higher on the bracket and tighten it back down. Once again, these don't have to be super tight. They're just holding these brackets in place so that the training wheels stay on the bike. If your rider learns how to ride their bike without their training wheels, taking these 15 millimeter nuts off, removing the training wheel brackets, and then applying them back on is just fine. It'll work completely as designed. If you leave the 15 millimeter nuts off, it won't hurt it either. So you can do either or. I have a little bit of wiggle here, which I think is pretty appropriate for making sure that the rear tire is going to be touching the ground, but also give our rider the ability to learn balance just a little bit on their own. And as they get better, they'll progress, and you'll notice that you can start taking those training wheels off and they'll be great and good to go. So now we're going to move to our pedals. So you're going to notice that your pedals have stickers on them. One says left, one says right. It's also going to have orientation arrows on how you apply those pedals. So the most common mistake people make while putting pedals on is putting the left pedal on the wrong side, or not noticing that the orientation arrows go in the opposite direction for tightening. So the left pedal is going to go on backwards, if you want to think of it that way, or lefty-tighty instead of righty-tighty, as many of us have been taught. Also, the right side of the bike is the side of the bike that has the drive line on it. So as you look through the chain guard here, you can see the chain. So the right side of this bike is this side with the chain guard, with the chain. It's that way on every bike, so you don't have to worry about it changing, but that helps you orientate where the right side of the bike is. So I'm going to take my right side pedal. I'm going to insert the threads, and I always start this by hand to make sure that I'm not cross-threading anything. And I'm going to probably get this one all the way in with my fingers and then use my pedal wrench just to finish it up. Yeah. All right, so we have the right side pedal on the right side of the crank, on the right side of the bike, and it tightens righty-tighty. Got my pedal wrench here. And I'm just going to use this wrench. It has more leverage, that's why it's a little bit larger. Lets us make sure that the pedal's tight. Periodically check your pedals to make sure that they're tight after use. That way, if they do start to loosen up, you can catch it before they fall off. All right, so our left pedal has the orientation arrows that go the opposite way. If your sticker has fallen off and you're having a little bit of trouble, the bottom of your threads should have an indicator of left or right. Should be stamped on there. If that indicator is not there and your sticker is missing, look for the little hash marks where the wrench faces would be. These little hash marks indicate a left side pedal. Your right side pedal won't have any hash marks going across those faces. So I'll flip the bike around. And so this side is going to be opposite. So I'm going to try to get this started by hand. And I think getting started by hand is extra important on the left-hand side because you're going the opposite direction. It's not something that many mechanical people are going to have a natural feeling for. So you're not stripping out any threads. And just like the other side, I was able to tighten this completely by hand and now use my pedal wrench to finish. All right, so now our left and right pedals are on. They're ready to go. We're going to finish up this with putting our handlebar on. Flip around the drive side to you. And so this may have had a plastic protector on it. You can slide that off. If you can't slide it off by hand, take a 15 millimeter wrench or your fingers, if you can, and loosen this piece of hardware here. That will let that plastic cap slide off. So we want this a little loose. We don't want it to be snug up against the post or anything there because it will not work unless it is loose. So now that that's loose, we're going to slide it into the head tube. And you're going to see some minimum insertion marks on here. These little hash marks indicate the minimum depth that the handlebar needs to be inserted for safety reasons into the head tube. So we're going to make sure that those are down and below the hardware. I'm just going to snug this up with my fingers here first. And it's also a great opportunity to line up the handlebars with the fork to get your front wheel straight with your handlebars. I usually look straight down, pretty easy in order to line things up. I'm obviously doing this on a table and not on the floor, so it's a little bit more difficult to explain it, but looking straight down, just hold the front wheel and tire still with your feet, and just kind of move the handlebars to wherever they need to be. Take that 15 millimeter wrench that you had and go ahead and tighten up the hardware here on the top. If your bike doesn't have a 15 millimeter here, it more than likely has a 5 or a 6 millimeter Allen or hex, and you can use that tool as well to tighten that up. It doesn't have to be super tight. You know, you don't have to really crank on it, but you do want it pretty good and snug. That way your steering stays in place. You can also lower the handlebars about an inch on most bike models if they need to have them lowered down a little bit. And some of our bikes have different features on the front, like a pad or a toy feature, or you know, something different like a bag, so you can attach those to the front. So that's the overall build of a 12, 14, 16, 18, and some 20-inch bikes. This one doesn't have hand brakes, so this one still uses a coaster brake style. So if you pedal backwards, it starts to brake. And the last thing that I do when I'm building a bike is typically check the air pressure in the tires. And to do that, I'm going to have this air pressure tester. You can get these from gas stations. Park Tool sells one as well, and it has the adapter for Presta valves if you have any of those bikes. This is a nice little thing to have. And to do this, we're going to unscrew the valve stem cap, set it off to the side there so we don't lose it. And I'm going to test my tire here by pressing down. And it looks like I have a little bit more than 10 pounds there. So I'm going to go ahead and pump that up. Now you're going to see a recommended air pressure on the tire itself. For a kid's bike especially, I recommend anywhere between 20 and 30 pounds. When you're inflating, you want to make sure, especially if you're inflating from empty, you want to make sure that the tire is seated all the way around the rim and you don't have any bulges where the tube or the tire are kind of going out past the rim. It doesn't take a whole lot on a smaller bike like this 12-inch bike. A 20-inch bike might take a little bit more. So it looks like I'm about 30 pounds. I'm using the gauge on my pump. Gauges on your pumps should be accurate, but sometimes they're not, so it's always a good idea to double check with this. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to push this gauge back on. And I'm right at the 30-pound mark. So that tire is full, it's ready to go. I can put my valve cap back on. I can do the same air pressure check and fill for the rear tire, and then we'll be all set to let our rider loose and enjoy their bicycle. So hopefully your bike is together and this video has helped, but if you do need any additional help, make sure you check out the phone number or web address on the back of your owner's manual. You'll be able to get parts and assistance there for anything you need, so make sure you do that if you need to. But other than that, that concludes the assembly of a 12, 14, 16, 18, and some 20-inch bikes from Huffy. So I hope this video helps. Once again, my name's JB. Have a great day.